So the Arts Council it distributes two kinds of money. Firstly, it gives money away from the Treasury, so that's your tax money, and also we're a national lottery distributor, so we give money away from the proceeds of the sale of the National Lottery game. And the way that we distribute it is slightly differently. So the National Lottery money is distributed through a scheme called Grants for the Arts, and that's an open application process, and anybody then can apply to get funding to support their project. And you can go online at www.artscouncil.org.uk and have a look. The application form is there. There's an assessment centre who can give you advice and support as well.
So how would you encourage younger theatre companies to get your support? How can they invite you to come and see their stuff to maybe get some money off you?
Well, that's a challenge because we're in London and we're surrounded by this amazing richness of talent and companies from all over the place. So I have a very small staff here now, and there's an awful lot for them to come and see. And I think it's really important that people do put those invitations out and that we do try and get people here to come and see the work that's being produced. So you can find out how to email Arts Council staff. That's not difficult, and again the details are online. And then I'm afraid it's perseverance. It's really getting hold of people and reminding them that there's something to see. It's giving us something which would kind of act as a teaser. So either there's real press interest or there's just groundswell and you can talk about the number of people who are interested in the work that you're doing, or you start to develop that track record. So as an artist or as a company, you can say, you might have come to see this back in whenever. Actually, we've developed the work from now. And the last way, perhaps, is to link with some of the companies that we fund with Treasury money. So the range of companies we fund, again, is online, but it ranges from companies like Battersea Arts Centre, The Tricycle in Kilburn, Arts Depot up in Barnet, Croydon, Clock Tower. So there's a whole range of venues, big pieces of infrastructure that we fund, and building partnerships with those venues is a really good way of then building the relationship with the Arts Council.
So with those bigger venues, is it because of what you just said then that maybe they get more money than smaller organisations?
Sure, it's a complex business, giving money away. It doesn't sound like it sounds like a luxury. But the sort of criteria we use are how much does it cost to run the building, regardless of what art you put in, because some of those big buildings cost a great deal of money to operate. Also, a sort of historic reason, some of those organisations have had funding for a long time and have built up the ability to really deliver very big, ambitious programmes. Some of them are about pushing art form, so they're right at the forefront of the things that they do, and we recognise the kind of excellence of the work they produce, and they get more money for that. And but I wouldn't want you to think we just fund buildings, because we fund touring companies, we fund circus, we fund outdoor art and performances. I know you're particularly interested in theatre. And all of those things as well receive funding from the Arts Council. So we have this sort of multiplicity of art that we support.
So what did you make of last Thursday night at the Hackney Empire? I mean, just in general, what did you think of the evening?
I think it's very challenging being part of those kind of public events. And that's because very clearly on that evening, one type of voice got heard. And there was obviously a great deal of anxiety and passion about the building. What I thought was a shame was that some of the more moderate voices, or the people who were genuinely interested to hear about the future of Hackney Empire, weren't able to be heard in that setting. So I made the offer on the night that we would be very happy to talk to people in different surroundings. Overall, I think people weren't there to listen. They were there to express their anxiety, which they did very clearly.
Okay, so do you want to tell me a little bit about the Arts Council relationship with Hackney Empire?
It's a long relationship. There's a history there. We as lottery distributors funded the refurbishment of Hackney Empire, which was a huge capital amount of money. So we helped with the restoration and turning it back into the beautiful building that it is. And since the building reopened, we've given it revenue funding as well. And that revenue funding has increased year on year. The challenge for Hackney Empire, and therefore for us as funders, is that it's a difficult building to make the budgets balance. And the reason for that is technical and complicated, but essentially it's a big space. It seats an awful lot of people. And in order to get the right content on stage, to generate the right audiences, it's expensive. So the since the building reopened, it hasn't sort of had a business model that has worked. It's been losing money, not necessarily huge amounts of money, but over a period of time it stacks up. And for us as a public funder, we get to a point where we have to question whether it's appropriate for us to keep putting public money into a building that's losing public money.
So will you continue?
Well, that's where we got to, and we've been working really hard with the board of Hackney Empire and the management of Hackney Empire to look at what we think needs to be done to resolve that situation. It's not my job as the public funder to run the building. As I said on the night, there's a temptation occasionally to do that, but really it isn't what I do. But we do have a role because we've got the overview to point out where we think things are weak and could be strengthened. We've always said that we're committed to trying to make that building work. Our revenue funding is still on the table. We put extra money in this year to enable them to come through. They've now got to a particular point with the sale of the site behind the theatre, Wilton Way, where they can get rid of their deficit. Puts them back onto an even keel. Much easier for them to then have a conversation with us as the funder because it all feels a bit more stable. And we'll work together now to make sure that they recruit a really great new chief executive in, somebody who understands Hackney and really appreciates all that passion that was in the room and can capture that and use it, but also critically somebody who has a commercial sense as well and is happy to mix the product that's going to generate loads of money without alienating audiences with the perhaps more experimental stuff which is important, and with all of the other community engagement programmes like the youth theatre, which are critical to Hackney's sense of being a wonderful community anchor, which I think it has that sense in spades, actually.
I thought it was amazing Thursday. I mean, to see so many people so passionate about one theatre. Yeah. You just don't see that a lot anymore at all. Final question, completely unconnected. Why do you think the West End and theatre in London has kind of defied the recession this year?
A couple of things. A long-term investment. So we've had 10 really great years of public investment in the arts generally, and that's built a really strong infrastructure. So that's the first thing. The second is that because we've had that sustained investment, our artists have thrived, and I think we've got art that is second to none at the moment, and the theatre sector in particular is on a high. So you look at how well our artists are doing, not just in this country, but abroad. You know, you look at the number of Oscar nominations we get, you look at the film directors who are out there, the actors, they've all come through the subsidised sector at some point. So that's the second thing, really great talent. And the third, I think, is that recognising that we're in a recession, I think people want something which takes them out of that. And I think theatre is my background, it's what I started in, more than anything else has the ability to lift people out of the current situation that they find themselves in into a different situation. Doesn't mean it's all banal and very light and fluffy, but that space that it creates in your mind, the imaginative space, is unbelievably valuable. And I think for many, many people, theatre offers that space, as does music for others, as does, you know, really getting into heavy dance for others. So I think the ticket sales are holding up because of that.